Good day, everybody. Good day, everybody. So, my apologies for disrupting the great energy and camaraderie and conversation that's happening in the room today. But we do have a program today while we're enjoying each other's company and enjoying breaking bread together. We also have the pleasure of a guest speaker today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Noorjean. Before I do that, I just wanted to formally welcome everyone to the May Hot Lunch. And yesterday when I was thinking about my notes, there was a beautiful sunny day, and I was saying, finally, spring is in the air. This is what I'm going to say to these wonderful people. And then this happened. So it's a fickle spring, I would say, but it looks good ahead. Also, just wanted to welcome the folks that are on Zoom. I think there's about 20 or so folks that have joined us on Zoom. So hello, Zoomies, and thanks for joining us from where you are. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered here in person on the traditional unceded ancestral territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people. And I just want to say, aren't we privileged and blessed to have the opportunity to study and work and play on these beautiful lands, and to recognize the long history of these lands as we do so frequently. So I feel really blessed to have that opportunity. I'm sure all of you do as well. And I know there's a number of people, as I said, from Zoom, and it's important that we pause and acknowledge that probably all of you are situated wherever you are on unceded or ancestral territories of Indigenous people. So take a moment to think about that and acknowledge and recognize that as well. My name is Andrew Parr. I'm the Associate Vice President of Student Housing and Community Services and a member of this Hot Lunch Committee. And I just want to take a minute and introduce other members of the committee that are here. We have Henry, the principal of St. John's College, and Shirley Nakata as well there. And Cheryl Dumaresque is on the committee as well. Eilish Courtney is here today. So great to see Eilish. There's Eilish. Nice to see you, Eilish. Hi. Nice to see you. Thanks. And also there's many staff at St. John's College who helped put this event together. Jenny, Joanne, and Stacy. I don't know if they're here, but just a wave and thanks to that group right there. So thanks to all of them. I'd also like to just take a minute and recognize and thank our colleagues in UBC Human Resources. This event, believe it or not, the few dollars that you pay for this meal does not cover the cost of it. So we need a sponsor, and Human Resources recognizes the value of staff coming together and having these opportunities, in this sort of formal setting, but informally as well. As a result of that commitment, they help they sponsor this event on an annual basis. So let's give our thanks to our colleagues in Human Resources. I'd also just like to acknowledge that a vice president has joined us today. Dr. Ainsley Carey is here, vice president students, who I and Noorjean both report to. So Ainsley, nice to see you here today. And Ainsley spoke at this event a while back, and nice to see you here today. Okay, let's get on to the main event. We're here to hear from our colleague, Dr. Noorjean Hassam, Associate Vice President of Student Health and Wellbeing. Noorjean is a good colleague of mine, and I'd say becoming a friend. And we met during COVID. She arrived during COVID, and for the first year, I would say, we only saw each other on Zoom and got to know each other well through Zoom conversations and whatnot. And we finally had a chance to meet over lunch, and we were meeting at Place Vanier. And I happened to come in one door, and Noorjean came in the other door. So if you've been to Vanier, it's quite a large space. So we were walking towards each other and waved. And the first thing that Noorjean said before I had a chance to say hello was, she goes, "I know, I'm shorter than you think." And I actually, just like you, I actually burst out in laughter, and it was very funny, but it was also telling of a reminder of how, in a way, impersonal, this whole Zoom life that we've lived in the last number of years is. You only see sort of from shoulders up, and there's a whole person there as well behind that. So it was great to see. Yeah. More formally, Noorjean joined UBC in May of 2021 in the heart of the pandemic. She came from the BC Centre of Disease Control, where she was the Chief Operating Officer since 2014. Big role from there to here. So we're pleased that you're here. Prior to this role, Noorjean was Regional Director of BC Cancer and has held several healthcare leadership roles in both Canada and the United States. In these roles, Noorjean has provided the strategic leadership that has enabled the advancement of critically important healthcare priorities and initiatives. She's also very interested and has a strong role in championing cultural safety, anti-racism, and reconciliation work in the variety of healthcare settings that she's worked, including here at UBC. In her role at UBC, she plays a pivotal role in continuing to enhance and advance our student health and wellbeing services and programs, and strengthening our health-related partnerships in supporting and integrating systems of care for our students. Wow, that's a mouthful. It's hard to say, even harder to do, I think, right, Noorjean? Noorjean has the 2021 award for the YMCA Woman of Distinction for Reconciliation in Action, and is an active and passionate community volunteer and leader as well. And hopefully she'll talk a bit about that today, because it's really amazing work. So with that, please join me in welcoming Noorjean.
Hello. Well, Andrew has thanked all the people I was hoping to thank. So I'm doubling that. Thank you to all of the organizers, and to Andrew especially for inviting me to come today, and for the very kind and warm introduction. I'd like to just start by acknowledging that I've grown up in Coast Salish territory, many parts of Coast Salish territory, and in Kickapoo Nation territory. Those are my two roots, and I hold very strongly to those roots and commit myself to the advancements of the rights for Indigenous people. It's really, really hard to talk for 5 minutes. Just want to say that right off the bat. So I might go over just a little bit, because I'm really excited to talk to you all today. I haven't had this opportunity to talk to this many people at UBC yet, because as Andrew mentioned, my first year was this, right? A nice little box. So I feel like this is my coming out party, and I was joking that this is my quinceañera, because here I am. But I'm excited. I'm going to keep it down to 5 to 7 minutes, and I thought I would just share with you a little bit about my career background, but actually it's already been shared. You know it, the BC CDC, everybody knows that place now because of COVID, right? Nobody knew it before. I used to have to tell people, no, I don't work in Atlanta. We have a CDC. So it's great. I don't have to say that anymore. I work there, and I worked at the Cancer Agency, and I really loved my time at the Provincial Health Services Authority. Both of those organizations are part of the PHSA. And working provincially is a real honor, because you're looking at the needs for all the people in our province, rural, remote, isolated communities, and you learn a lot about the various needs of populations across our land that way. So that was a real honor, but it's a real honor to be here too. At UBC, I've only been here 2 years, but it feels like I've been here for my life, because this is my alma mater. This is my husband's alma mater. This is my son's alma mater. And inshallah, if my next son wants to come to UBC, we'll be that family, right? We'll be that family of Thunderbirds with our little toots. But here I was hired into this role as the first Chief Student Health Officer, now AVP Student Health. There's a story behind that. I'd love to tell you that story, but it has to wait because it doesn't fit into my 7 minutes. But I'm now the AVP for Student Health and Wellbeing. And this is the only role so far at UBC that has been solely focused on student health and wellbeing. There have been other people in roles similar to this, but they had much bigger portfolios. But UBC and Dr. Ainsley Carey decided that we needed someone whose focus is going to be firmly on that. Sorry, I have to follow my notes, otherwise I'm just going to go off forever. I wanted to give you an overview of what student health and wellbeing was before I got too far in this conversation, because I'm not sure that everybody understands that picture or has had a chance to intersect with it. But student health and wellbeing includes counseling services, which are centrally located and embedded in many faculties and units, including Vantage College, which is the place that I went to for this lunch before I showed up here. It has the primary care clinic, which has doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners and specialists. We have that in 2 locations across the campus. We have the student recovery community, which is a peer-led community of supporting students in all phases of recovery for behavioral or substance addictions. We have health equity promotion and education program, which is where we have health promotion specialists, knowledge translators, data analysts, all working upstream to make an impact on social and other determinants of health for our students. And I'll mention also the Office of Wellbeing Strategy, which is part of my portfolio and partners with Student Health and Wellbeing. The Office of Wellbeing Strategy advances the Okanagan Charter and the Wellbeing Strategic Framework across UBC with faculty and staff partners. So as I mentioned, UBC decided to hire this role not because they didn't have a good reason. Dr. Carey was here a year before I was and spent a lot of his time listening to students. And the theme that came out of his listening sessions by far was that students needed more support for their health. They needed to be able to access services better. They needed to understand and be able to navigate our services better. And they needed the services to reflect them better. These are all things we heard directly from students. UBC also understood that while the student population had grown over the years, our population of providers hadn't grown. So there was a gap. And lastly, COVID. COVID taught us all how serious mental health issues can be. And we recognize that students, just like the rest of our population, really need support for their mental health and wellness. And that we can't find simple solutions like counseling out of these. So we needed a more complex system to really bring down those concerns. So when I came to UBC, Ainsley said, here's the problems that I want you to attend to, but there's also an opportunity that I'm giving you in this, and that's a new building. There's a new building going up at UBC. It's right now called the Gateway Building. And 1 floor of this building is dedicated to student health and well-being. So those services that I mentioned that are located all across campus will eventually be located in 1 floor of this building. And that's a huge opportunity because that will help with navigation. It'll help with partnerships and many other things, but it's not as simple as that. So when I came here, there was a lot of work to do in building a leadership team, filling about 20 FTE that were missing because they had either were leaving or had changed jobs or were moving to other places. There was a little bit of setting the foundation that had to happen first. I also spent a lot of time just listening to any student and staff person who would speak to me about what the real situation was at UBC. And in that, we came up with a plan to do integration work. And that's what I wanted to kind of deep dive in today, just a little bit. I didn't put a timer up here. I hope somebody else has a time. But I wanted to tell you what integration means to student health and well-being, because this is the work me and the team that I work with are focused on very heavily. And we will be focused on this work for some years, but we do hope that by the end of it, it'll just improve the situation for students. So for us, integration means figuring out how we're going to take these relatively distinct, really well-functioning independent groups and have them function now as one whole. It's not about putting people in the same space and then still working independently, but them working together as one organized unit. And that the students feel that the care that they're getting from this unit is holistic. That we're not cutting the students up and dealing with their mental health here and their physical health here and other things over here, but we're looking at them as a full person. That's the biggest goal of integration. And that's not about processes and policies. That's about changing the culture. It's about building trust between human beings who haven't had a chance to work together and having them trust and know each other so that they can build a system around the student rather than around the various providers. We're also looking at all of our communications, our web communications, social, paper, in-person communications, to make sure that students feel welcome in every place and that they understand and can navigate our services and can trust our services. We're shifting our electronic health records. So instead of having 2 electronic health records, we're going to have 1, which means we have to build a system, an electronic health system, into a record so that it can accommodate the needs of all of our providers. But we can share that information because students want us to share that information. They don't want to have to tell their story over and over. We're working with students to understand how to make our programs more streamlined and harmonized. We've got a student health and wellness advisory committee that we meet with monthly, and they gave us clear direction on what they want to see change in student health and well-being. We're working on all of our back office processes because they too need to be harmonized, because students coming to us have to have a consistent look and feel and process when they come to us. We also have a lot of hiring to do because UBC approved a 5-year plan for $10 million for us to hire staff. And right now, this morning on the radio, if anybody heard CBC on the way to work, they were saying that there's 150,000 postings available for healthcare workers that are unfilled. We have a nationwide healthcare resource shortage, and it's within this shortage that we're doing the biggest hiring that UBC has ever done for student health and wellbeing staff. So we've got a challenge there, but it's a great opportunity for us. While we're doing all of this work though, our team is very committed and actively working towards advancing health equity, diversity, inclusion, and social justice. So I really think about that kind of work that we're doing as a layer on top of our integration work because it affects everything that we do. We evaluate all of our programs, and we really have to take an honest look at ourselves to see if we're serving who we are meant to serve and to see who we are not serving and make those really hard shifts sometimes to serve the people that we need to. Lastly, I think it's really important for everybody to know that the UBC current student health and wellbeing services are currently excellent. So despite all of these changes and improvements that we're making, those excellent services are continuing. And in fact, right now, more UBC students than ever are getting services through our programs. So it's all those people who are continuing to see students that are doing all of this integration work on top of their day jobs. So I just want to put my hands up to my teams across student health and wellbeing for the incredible work that they do. So I hope that was quick, but I wanted to give you a picture of what student health and wellbeing looks like today and where we want to see it go tomorrow. And I think I'll be here for questions later on. Thank you.
You can see why she said. Thank you, Noorjean. I think you can see the passion and energy that Noorjean brings to work every day in that 7 or 8 minute introduction to the amazing work that Noorjean and her team are doing. From what you could hear, I'm sure you all recognize that UBC is not only is Noorjean committed to this, but UBC is committed to this. Ainsley is very committed to this. Noorjean mentioned the release of a significant budget to increase the staff and the services provided through this. So it's a very important aspect of what UBC does to support students outside of the classroom and within the classroom. Noorjean talked about integration of her team. It's also very refreshing integration between portfolios as well. So the my team in student housing that has a residence life, for example, and supports students and residents is much more connected to central student health services and whatnot now. So there's really great integration happening outside of the portfolio that Noorjean's responsible for as well. But once again, please join me in thanking Noorjean for her work. So we have a few minutes where you can mix and mingle, enjoy some coffee, desserts, and prepare to answer or ask questions. I was going to say there's papers on the tables, but there's not papers on tables, so I'm not sure how we're gonna do that. Should we just do it live today? Okay, we're gonna go live, so think about what your questions might be, and you can throw your hand up, and Noorjean will, unfiltered. Just flying by the seat of our pants here today. So yeah, take a break, mix and mingle, and we'll be back with you in about 10 minutes. Thanks. Okay, Noorjean has agreed to live questions. So maybe if you have a question or you have a comment or you want to share something, throw up your hand and we'll you can set up and just from where you are pose that question. So any questions to start? I'll start. Does someone have one? I didn't see a hand go up. Henry.
I want to know more about the family and your background. I just want to try. I think not much of the excuse to try. Good one.
He majored in finance. He lives in New York. He's on that side. He's living in his, I'm pretty sure. So the most important thing about me personally is I'm texting. That's my guilty secret. That's why I had to clear most of the room before I said that. I grew up there. It's very much in my heart. Although we live in arguably the most beautiful city in the world, there's something about the extreme weather of Texas that once it's like an addiction. The intense heat, but what people don't know about Texas is you get intense rain and snow, and not snow, intense rain and ice. The ice breaks trees and houses, and the rain will absolutely soak the land, and because the land won't soak anything up, everything is flooded, and then an hour later, everything is dry. I love that. I don't like being wet all the time. I love the beauty, but you get wet. So that's who I am. I've got two kids, as I mentioned, the one on the dark side, and the other one is in high school. He, I don't know what he's going to do, but he is interested in coming to UBC because we all do that in our family, apparently. And he's interestingly enough, the one who has the most Thunderbird here, because although he's only in high school, he's been on the Thunderbird track and field team for a very long time. He's 100-meter hurdles, long jump. He's young yet, so they do quite a few, but he's pretty good. It's pretty good. My kids are quite a bit talented. Super shocking. What else? Our family lived here for many, many years and in the States, but we're originally from England. What else can I do? Biggest hobby? I think, to be honest, I don't have a lot of time for fun right now. Not because we do a lot of volunteering. It's not your fault. But it is your fault. It is your fault. I'll tell you why. Because you support us having lives outside of UBC. And our life outside of UBC is pretty involved. Our family, I would say, not just myself and my husband and my children, but even for many generations back, we're part of the Ismaili community. And if you know Ismailis, you know that we volunteer all the time, right? That's what we do. We volunteer. And so aside from sitting on various boards and committees for as long as I can remember and supporting any event that shows up, sometimes we also have various roles in our community. And I know that Andrew's going to ask me about this anyway, so I'll just out myself. So right now, my husband and I have enrolled in our community. It's called Mukani and Mukisai for one of our Jamakanas. It's a daily commitment. So we basically spend our evenings supporting the community to come together for prayers and other events. We would marry people. We bury people. And we, I don't know what the word is. It's kind of like baptized, but we bring babies into the faith. So we conduct all of those ceremonies as well. And I'll be honest, this is the 4th year that we're doing this. And this is our last event in July, they say. And it takes up all my time. Takes up all my time outside of my son, who's still at home, and work. But it's absolutely our hard work and brings us a lot of happiness. But I look forward to reading books again, just doing stuff, because I have to remember what it's like to do other things. I don't know what that's going to be. Hi.
Hi, my name is Nathan. I work with prospective students, and it was really interesting hearing a little bit more about your experience prior to coming to UBC. And I'm curious if there's been any particular surprises or sort of differences that you didn't anticipate from working with like public health and then moving into like working with current students. Anything that sort of like doesn't come up business.
That's a great question. I think the biggest surprises to me coming here was when I first came to UBC, I was looking forward to bringing a public health approach to UBC. Because we do have a captured population of students. And this is a great opportunity to look at that population of students over the time that they're here and see what is it that we can put in place that will impact them upstream from one year to the next. What I didn't realize was how diverse the experience of students are. That it's actually incorrect to call them a population. They are many populations. And what I was hoping to do en masse can't happen. It has to happen a lot more targeted to various groups, which is not a bad thing. And it's very much in line with the health equity approach. So that was a big shift for me. It's hilarious to me how it's same, but different. You know, all of the challenges that we had in the public health system and in the healthcare system, they're duplicated here. Just different players with different titles, but the same sorts of things. So that's good because we have some of those skills to address some of these things, but it's unfortunate because it says something about large bureaucracies and the systemic challenges that these large bureaucracies hold. So I think that coming from public health and even the work that I did in public health, what I would like to see more of here is a shift in power dynamics. Because ultimately those long-standing entrenched problems that we see in all bureaucracies have their roots in our current power dynamics. And it's only when we can affect those roots that we're actually going to make a difference. But changing those power dynamics is really, really, really challenging because there's so many people, as we all know, who are firmly holding on to those. Does that answer? Yeah. Hi. I can share, yes. So this year, the university gave $800,000 towards food security for 23-24 term. And in fact, just yesterday, we met with the student groups across the UBC Vancouver and we met with a representative from the UBC Okanagan to talk about how we're going to distribute that $800,000 for this year. It hasn't been decided, so I don't want any snippets from what I say to be put in any newspaper. But ultimately, I think that the commitment that the VPS portfolio, Ainsley had a meeting with the leaders of the AMS and told them the same thing, is that our commitment is to have students decide how this student food security funding is going to be spent. And they very loudly said at this meeting that some of the things that they want to see continued support for are things like the AMS Food Bank, Agora, Sprouts. There was some discussion about meal share plan, yes or no, I don't know. The Food Hub Market, they're very committed to. I think I'm forgetting one. Am I forgetting one? Okay, so those are the things that we're going to see supported this year, and in many of those cases, more support than previously.
There is one for Acadia Park.
Acadia Park, yes, thank you. That's the.
I also add, that is direct food funding, like cans of food. And then in student financial services, there's nearly $2 million available for student aid related to food and housing, et cetera, et cetera. But direct food is what you're.
Exactly, and I'm going to repeat that so that if there's anyone on Zoom, are there still people on Zoom? Yeah, I'll repeat it so they can hear it here. Ainsley was just mentioning that this is direct food aid. So this is direct food, like cans of food, but also some support for giving those cans of food to the people they need. But there's also $2 million of enrollment fund, like bursary type funding for students who are in financial hardship that they can access who are food secure. Thank you. Hi, Nathan.
Yeah. You were talking about the Okanagan campus. Sorry, that was ready, but is your role across both campuses?
Yes and no. I would say, the Okanagan campus has its own structure, but I'm very much a partner with that structure, and more we're finding ways where I can have influence there as well as here. And it's, I don't, that doesn't sound right. It's not me having influence there. It's us working together and looking for ways to harmonize what we do there and here. For me, it's a challenge because I feel like a UBC student is a UBC student. So it bothers me when we have some services in one campus and not in the other. But I also understand that the campuses are so different. So the services don't have to look the same, but they have to meet the same needs. So that's what we're trying to get to. And
If you could fast forward 10 years from today, what would the student experience look like from your perspective?
yeah. I think I would love to switch the perception of universities from a place of stress and hardship to a place of healing and growth. Because over time, meeting students, you realize that students come from all places, and many of them have had hardships in their lives before they got here and to get here. And it's too bad that being here is so stressful. I understand why. We all understand that this is a time of growth. So there's going to be some natural stresses, but I wish that there was a sense that this was a place of healing and growth and belonging. I think we do an excellent job in all three of those things for some students. But if we could have that be more pervasive for all of our students, that would be my dream. And all of those things would actually make our student health and wellbeing services, not our programs, but our services, less needed. So putting ourselves out of business is always the business of health, right? That would be my dream.
Any thoughts on some unique populations like graduate students, international students, and IB pop students? The thoughts, ideas on any one of those categories with regards to the student?
Yeah, well, let's just pick one. Let's pick international students, for example, because international students are our biggest client in student health services. So they're the people who come to see the doctors and nurses the most. In fact, the majority of students in one of our surveys, I want to say, no, I'm not going to guess which survey, but I have the data right here in my head, that the majority of our students who are not international have an attachment with a healthcare provider in the community already. So they don't come to UBC needing that attachment. They already have that. Our international students do not. So they are the ones that access our services the most, but they're also the ones that have the most difficult time accessing our services. Not only is the insurance thing just
wackadoodle to understand. The culture is brand new. The stigma is different here than it is back home. What you would go to seek help for and what you might not go to seek help for are different. There's barrier after barrier after barrier, language barrier for international students. So that's where we're going to put a big part of our focus when we talk about our health equity work and really think about how are we meeting the needs of international students, not as an add-on, because that's the problem, right? The problem is we build systems for a domestic student who's, middle income, and then we adapt that for a low income student. We adapt that for a student who's international. We adapt that for a student who's an English language learner. We have to build the system from scratch for those other groups and not always center the mainstream group.
We have time for one more question.
Nathan, do you have anything else? Go ahead.
What does that integration look like once you build that foundation?
Yeah.
How does the community, if you see a student who has this goal, how can we educate ourselves to do that support so they feel like a sense of belonging instead of as a student in the nowadays just walk around as a number and all of this. How do you support that sense of belonging in the community? So they're aware of those resources at Gateway.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I think that there's 100 things that can happen. That's why I had to write a speech to not talk for now. But ultimately, I think the faculty have the biggest influence on students' well-being. So we often go to crisis response and looking at our green folder and saying, hey, know the green folder so you know who to send a student to. But there is so much that happens before then. So I think it's really a matter of introspection first, because you have to start with yourself and how you are engaging with the student population that you're serving. If you're part of that problem, you have to think about how you might change your ways of being to better support those students. We're not saying take away academic rigor. We're not saying anything like that. But there are many ways that a faculty member can create a supportive rather than a non-supportive environment. A safe versus a unsafe environment. So it's really taking the time to learn about what those are and how you are making that impact as a faculty member yourself. I think it's our responsibility as student health and well-being to support you in that. And that's what we will be doing soon, not yet, and the Office of Wellbeing Strategy will be heavily involved in this work as well, to help you shift those cultures. It's our responsibility to help you understand how to make those changes, but ultimately it's up to the faculties to make those changes themselves and work upstream. Because if we train all faculty on early alert and crisis management, then they're not paying attention until it gets there. We want to have them thinking upstream and thinking about what they're doing as a whole to their student population so they don't get there. And you can't stop everybody from getting there, but you can reduce the numbers. So I'm sure that there's more details we could talk about, but I hope that gives you kind of the picture.
I'm a staff member, but I'm just in my dean's office. I don't know if it's
VPS.
Oh, VPS, sorry, but like in my dean's office,
Yeah.
there's like 80 kids, 80 academics.
Yes.
I don't know who's responsible for that connection to your portfolio.
Right.
And I don't know if that's different from all.
Yeah. So maybe that's another place we can start, is making those connections. Yeah. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Noorjean. Once again, yes. I was thinking we're maybe lucky, maybe blessed, but aren't we lucky and blessed that Noorjean has decided to join us to be here? Proven out by the words and your presentation, but maybe even more proven out by your actions and responses to those questions. And thank you for being vulnerable enough to accept those questions without having to, the ability to vet them and decide what you want to answer, which we normally do. So Once again, thank you, Noorjean, and thank you, everybody. You know, it's funny how the mind works. I think I made a mistake at the beginning when I said, welcome to the May hot lunch. You're nodding. Did I say that? Like I'm thinking, I'm sure I said May, but it's April. I'm thinking way ahead. But May does have a hot lunch, and it's May 31st. Dr. Arik Al-Shabab, who's the AVP of Equity and Inclusion, is going to join us for that. Will be a very interesting and very important conversation. So mark your calendars for May 31st for the next hot lunch. And that wraps this session. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Oh, and while you're getting up, I just want to say thank you for the keynotes. To Clarence and team and the front end staff. Thank you, guys.